Okay, so this panel is one of my favorites. People plus process equals experience. I think a lot of us are trying to figure out how to put in repeatable processes that lead to a good customer experience, because everybody has the 1 and 2 stories about, oh, we have a great story of a customer who was served by one of our people, or someone who's really grateful how you help them solve a problem. But the challenge comes in, like, how do we make that just a regular part of doing business? So we have a great panel and a lot of experience on the stage when it comes to delivering this. So we're gonna go down, we're gonna do short introductions, and then we're gonna get into it. So Liza, first, please.
Just the introduction.
Let me just hold up. Did I turn that off?
Hello.
Sabotage. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go introductions first, and then we'll go around and we'll jam on it.
I'm Liza Borsius, President and CEO of Carter Myers Automotive, and we have 23 rooftops in Virginia and West Virginia, and then soon to be Maryland.
Oh.
I'm Phil Gill, General Sales Manager at my family's store, Tom Gill Chevrolet, Cincinnati Marketplace.
Hello, good afternoon. Kirk Preiser here, formerly the Director of Retail Buying Experience at Audi of America. My last day was actually yesterday, but I can speak 28 years in automotive.
And now you can say what you want.
Oh yeah, I could, exactly.
That's the
and
first
you can
day
ask me. You can ask me any question
How
you
long
want
were you there?
about the OEMs. I was at Audi for 13 years.
So we have 13 years of pent up things that you always wanted to say.
And then 15 years at Ford.
Get your cameras out, everybody.
15 years at Ford and 13 years at Audi. So yes, I'm happy to talk about any questions you have about the OEMs, because I can speak freely.
Okay, fantastic. Can't wait. This is going to be a fun one. When you all think about building a repeatable process that delivers some level of experience that you want, what is the starting point of your thought process? Not necessarily the first building block of it, but like, how do you even start approaching process that equals experience? Where do you start thinking?
Well, I'll take about 2 minutes and just share where we started about 8 years ago.
There you go.
So, customer experience, I think, has always been at the forefront of all of our minds on the retail side. We've known for 99 years that if you don't have a great customer experience, you're not going to stay in business. But I don't know that we took that seriously until about 8 years ago. We started studying quadrants of our customers and where their retention and loyalty was with our company. And so the real quick and dirty was we had a group of customers that absolutely loved us, were raving fans, would never do business with anyone but CMA, and we could read all the letters and texts and emails and stories that they would share about these wow experiences our customers or our sales associates and service advisors created. And then we had this group of customers who we completely ticked off, did horrible things wrong, made major mistakes. They told us, and we fixed it, and oftentimes could create ambassadors by going over and above once we knew about a problem. But there were all these people in the middle. And that's where we started diving into where you start with these repeatable processes. These are the people that if they had to rank us on a 1 to 5 would give us a 3, maybe even a 4. Not upset enough with us to tell us, not happy enough with us to only want to do business with us in the future. They're the ones that are going to shop us on every oil change, every sale, et cetera, and certainly not refer us to their friends and family. And so we dug in and we ended up coming up with 32 different indicators or processes that we found were the foundation that we needed to build so that we could have that customer experience and even have the opportunity to wow a customer. So we did a lot of work back then, and then slowly over 8 years, we've dug into little ones down to making sure the phone doesn't ring more than 3 times before it's answered, making sure that no one's on hold more than 1 minute. And I'm not saying we do all of these things right, but a big one for us was also making sure that every customer whose car spent the night in our service department got a call every single night. So we identified all of these and then had to slowly figure out how to build processes around them so that they were repeatable, that we weren't dropping people through the cracks, because there was no way to wow the customer if we didn't do the basics right and have a foundation of process.
Do you remember the block percentages of like the raving fans and then the people that weren't happy? Do you remember about what percentages those were?
Well, I don't know if the sample size should have, I'm not a data person, so I don't know if we had the right sample size. But I would tell you the numbers that the people we looked at, it was something in the high 30s were the people that were wowed, that seemed to be very strongly loyal. Mm-hmm. We had it was like just under 20% that we actually had people that were upset with something enough that they told us. So that would leave about what, 45% in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing the math right. It's been a while.
That's all right.
Maybe 50% in the middle.
Yeah, it's dealer math.
Yeah. Round up, down, whatever suits you.
Okay, so I think I want to get back to this, and I really do want to drill into some of these indicators and how you came to them, because I think that's valuable for all of us in the room. How can we start to develop those? Thank you for that. Phil, you all, so how many people do you have at your store? I want to give a sample size.
Yeah, we're 130 employees at our store now.
Okay, so a sizable team, especially for a single point. How do you have a lot of process, because I know this about you a little bit. Where did you start thinking about process for experience? And because if you don't know, a little background, Tom Gill, Chevrolet, right? Tom kind of started this train in motion, and you've come along. You've actually deployed a lot of data and a lot of process. So where was your starting point for how can we get repeatable experience?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we first identified when we were looking for repeatable experience was actually having repeatable employees. So what I mean by that is every time you come in, you don't see a different face, right? I think we miss the retention piece a lot of the time in our own employees. And we're always after customer retention, but it really means nothing if we don't have the employee retention. So one of the first places we looked at were, what were the processes we were doing to improve employee experience in order to retain employees so we could have better repeatable process for customer experience. And, when we started focusing on that, our store-wide turnover was somewhere in the 60% range. Our sales side was close to 80%, right? This year we're under 10%, right? And this is,
wow.
So
how long ago was that?
So that was probably about 6 years ago is when, we really started digging into this problem. And that's made a significant difference in our customer experience now, because my dad was always process, but it really didn't mean anything if you're always training new people on a process.
You better have a process.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the only one you're using is your onboarding one.
Right, exactly. So, which was so then as well, But now that we've got that retention piece fixed, we've done a lot of push into process, or in the customer experience process, from what it's like in our sales floor to our service drive to when they're interacting with us on the internet. So it's become a really powerful experience for not only our employees but our customers, it's helped create those raving fans and those people that will continue to come back to us year after year, and really helped grow our business.
That's great. And we'll get back to some of that too.
Yeah.
And I think even though this isn't a room about employee retention, I think experience is a big part, starting to think about that. Kirk, you've kind of have been looking at things from a much higher kind of broad level. And obviously from the OEM standpoint, process is kind of the language the OEM speaks, in my opinion. So how did you all approach it? And, in your understanding, also the OEMs, then the dealer side, where do those two things come together?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things I can add to the conversation. The OEMs are getting much more involved, as everybody knows, in the actual purchase experience. And I think that there's some misinformation with respect to why they're doing it. In a lot of cases, it's because of a frustration that we're not seeing the change that we need to see at the dealer level. And now that there's new competitors in the market that are selling manufacturer direct, like Tesla and Lucid and Rivian, et cetera, there's a whole another layer or a new bar, that customers are expecting from the experience. And so the OEMs are starting to get much more involved in what the dealers are doing, because none of us wants, or none of them, I can't say us anymore.
It's only been a day.
It's only been a day. 12 hours.
It'll take a year to get rid of that.
Wants to lose that business. So I've always said that it's basically a three-legged stool. It's the people, the processes, and the technology all together. You have to have all three. And I'm super excited that we've got all these new technology vendors that are out there that are coming to the market. There's a lot of investment in this particular space, and dealers are finally adopting new technologies. I was out there pitching websites back in the 90s, trying to get dealers to adopt a website, and nobody wanted to do it. So I'm really happy that dealers are adopting all these new technologies. The problem that I see across the country as I go out and work with dealers is that we're too reliant on the technology, and we're not focused enough on the people and the processes. And so what I like to say is that if you take a digital retailing tool and you stick it on your website and you don't train your people on it, you're actually going to make the consumer's purchase experience worse, okay, than if you didn't have it at all in many cases. So back in the 1990s, when you had a website, about the worst mistake that you could make is you didn't pull a car down off your website fast enough after you sold it. Okay, customers would get upset. I can't believe this car sold, but you could get over that. You could find another vehicle for them, you know, and they kind of understood. That was about the worst mistake. But nowadays, when you have a consumer that's going to your website and they're getting into a digital retailing tool and they're spending 20 or 30 minutes calculating a lease payment and a finance payment and looking at multiple different vehicles, and then you can't connect that online experience when they come in store or when they engage with you. I like to use the word engage with you because it's not just coming in. It might be via email or text message or remotely, etc. If you can't connect from the moment they make contact with you with exactly what they were seeing on your website, you're going to lose all trust from the get-go before you even start. And that's why you would be better off not even having a digital retailing tool on your website unless you're willing to train your people on how to go into it, how to research it. Let's see what the customer did. Let's connect the dots between what they saw at home and what they see in store. So that's what our team was really focused on, was in-store training of dealers on how to make it completely omni-channel so that everything that they did at home is completely synced with the moment they make contact with the dealer.
So you're really tying, like, really the title of this session, you're training the people to use a very specific process and saying if the two come together and the work that they did matches up with what they experience when they step in the store, right? That's going to be what provides a great experience.
Yeah, what's interesting is being around the industry as long as I have, there's so much frustration built up from the customers on this overall experience, but most of the time I see dealership employees who really want to do a great job. Like, they're great people, and that's why I love the work that you guys are doing. They care about the consumer. They care about their job. They really want to do a good job, but they just haven't had the proper training, okay, to be able to deliver that experience that the consumer is looking for.
You know, we mentioned it this morning on the panel up on the main stage about so often when we adopt new technology, we focus on what it means to the customer, and we don't understand, is it a great experience for the associate? Because if the experience with the associate is not a good one and they're frustrated, that absolutely shows when they're communicating with the customer on the showroom floor or in the BDC or on the phone. The other thing that Kirk and I were actually talking before the session, we all work in these 30-day timeframes in automotive. Everything cycles back to pay plans and objectives and financial statements in that 30-day window. And so often these solutions that we're looking to adopt to create a better customer experience, sometimes you go backwards a bit before you can go forward. Sometimes there's a pause or things slow down, and that's really hard for all of us. And so in order for us to adopt something, you know, making that mindset shift in our dealerships, which we have not been able to fully do, saying, how do we take the online experience and make it seamless into the showroom? We have to say, what does success look like a year from now? And be okay with maybe some bumps in the road in order to get there, including, as we were saying, if you're missing your sales objective a few months, knowing that that might be something we have to suck up to get the experience that ultimately we want on the end.
I mean, that's a major culture shift, right? To even have your team trust you that, like, I mean, I think of all the dynamics in what you just said, because a lot of these processes and all these objectives have been in place for a long time. And then all of a sudden, you can't just say they don't matter, right? Because the business won't work. If all of a sudden it's like, oh, these don't matter anymore, now experience matters, and we're going to see how it goes for a quarter, right? No one's ready to sign up for that. So how do you baby step and set some, like, checkpoints where it's like, okay, these are both important, but we understand that we have to get better at this, which means we might have to sacrifice the attention on this. How do you lead a team through that?
So we've gone through this transition, and I think our team does a really great job of using the online tool to in-store.
And which could you? I mean, I don't know which online tool you use.
Yeah, so we're currently a user of Roadster, and we kind of designed we adopted that into our sales process and designed our processes around
that piece
the
of technology.
Roadster experience. So it reflected when the customer came in, we knew exactly where they were at, and when they went back, we could continue that engagement with them, right? Now, we did a lot of other changes with that. We went to a more A to Z type sales process to where our product specialist started with the lead and then continued with that person when they came into the showroom. So I tried to make it omni-channel, not just with the technology, but with the person as well. That way you had total knowledge around what was happening. But this has taken us 3 or 4 years to get down, right?
Say that again. How long?
It's taken 3 or 4 years to commit to this,
right.
to commit to this vision. And we started with, well, what's the vision? What's our idea that's this great process that we want and experience that we want? And then we set smaller goals along the way. So goal number 1 was, let's learn the technology and start getting it implemented, right? So it didn't even matter so we actually visited another store that was using Roadster, looked at engagement practices and said, okay, these 3 metrics are the only thing we're going to care about until we get to, this point in the process. And then we changed the metrics. And it just helped grow over time with that end goal in mind that this is where we want to be.
What are some of those upsides? So 3 or 4 years of time investment, building a process around a piece of technology, and I'm sure you could pick a piece of technology and build a process around it. What's the upside now 3 or 4 years later? Yeah,
so 3 or 4 years later, the customer experience is a great experience. I mean, the streamline of the entire experience is amazing to me. If somebody starts with us online and we get to, let's just say they select a car, right? They could spend less than an hour in our store and be papered and out. Right. And we've done a lot with Techion to get there as well and streamlining all those processes. But it's an amazing customer experience. Our people are more efficient. So my sales staff went from selling about 11 cars a person. They are now at 18 cars a person. Right. So it's made them a lot more efficient in dealing with customers, which obviously also helps
the 90% retention.
The 90% retention and all those other things that go along with it. It allows my management, because our salespeople are empowered to kind of go through this and work with the customer and things like that. They're more focused on training. They're more focused on getting that little extra bit when the customer's there. It might be, an extra F&I bump or something along those lines that allow them to focus in different things other than how do we just get this deal put together right then and there when the customer's in store.
You talk about magical experience. That's the language that Tom Gill, and he said, where you always feel the magic, right? I got my Tom Gill. It's always. I guess how you say it in Kentucky.
Yeah, you got to have that slang. That little drawl. Yeah.
How did that word guide you in through your sales process? Magical experience. Like, I know obviously you're Disney studiers.
Yeah. So the whole vision of how do we create people and process kind of started with the Disney experience that General Motors put together. And what came out of that was a really good framework for our people to use our processes to make decisions. So, we go off of safety, show, courtesy, and efficiency. And if they use our framework around those 4 areas of focus to make decisions and guide customers, what we find is that we're going to stand behind those decisions because they use the framework to do it, right? That helps create magical experiences because when people can connect with the process and be empowered to then make those decisions, the customer feels so much more comfortable. I mean, what we see now is that it's amazing how much more comfortable a customer is when they don't have to get handed off to a finance person, right? Everything's done at this desk they've been sitting at the entire deal. And so it's really impactful to that customer, right? I hear it all the time is, oh my gosh, I don't have to go back to another office to sign paperwork. No, we just do it right here on a tablet and you're in and out of here, right? Or we can do it remotely and you don't have to come back. Or, so it's all those little things to where we can connect the people and the technology to create this great customer experience that kind of blows people's minds a little bit because nobody else can do it in the dealer space.
Got it. No, that's great. Liza, I do want to come back to what I said in the beginning. You said there were 36 points, 32 points?
32.
32 points that you uncovered that were basically inflection points that, that people had that you said, hey, if we get involved here or cut this off here. Can you share some of those with us and how you actually pulled those out of your information, your data, your findings?
So when we started the process, I think it was almost 8 years ago, and we came up with those 32 indicators. I'm going to bring it forward to just a couple years ago, and actually sitting in here today, we have a brand engagement manager, but I'm going to boil it down to customer experience. We have a full-time senior manager across all of our dealerships whose only focus is helping to identify areas that we can improve in our customer experience. And so when we look at those 32 indicators, one of the things that she did early on in her time with us was create journey maps of when a customer, and I'm going to go to the service side of our business because that's a lot of where her focus is. While the sales side is really important on the customer experience, we touch a whole lot more customers on the service side.
A lot of at-bats.
And so being able to she created a journey map of every time we touch a customer throughout the whole service process, where those also lined up with those 32 original indicators from the moment they connect with us to create a service appointment. How easy do we make it? How do we look at our online scheduler? How do we answer the phones? How far are we scheduling out? What is the language even that we're using when we're connecting with that customer? The word that we use in our company, our word is care, as you know. And so even figuring out how in that original touch point, how are we communicating a higher level of care? And so a couple of the big ones when we look at those 32 indicators, the one that had the largest roadblock of our customer experience was how we're communicating when somebody's car isn't a in and out immediate service. And so at one point, this was 7 or 8 years ago, it's harder today because of all the parts on back order and the number of engines we're doing at Hyundai and Kia and cars being in our dealership sometimes for 3 and 4 and 8 and 9 months. But at one point we had a policy that every customer got a call every night that their car spent the night in our shop. And I
can see how that'd get complicated now.
Now it's a little bit complicated.
Just tell me when you get the part. We'll be good.
Right? They're like, please stop calling me. It's been 9 months.
Just so you remember, we're the ones that have your car.
Right. It's still safe. But I think having a commitment of having a person whose sole job is to be identifying opportunity areas of our customer experience, journey mapping it, because in each dealership, there's a different indicator that might be more important. And so she works every month with our service managers on, right now, one of their biggest focuses is video multi-point inspections. And when we talked earlier about sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, no technician wants to stop to do a video, and how much time is that going to take them, and you're not paying me to do that. So I was just brainstorming with a few other dealers of, do we need to, for a couple of months until this is happening 100% of the time, do we need to be spiffing these technicians, pay them now so they can understand how the benefit of taking the time to do the video is going to create more recommendations, more work that is then
fast approvals, right?
Yeah,
a lot
that is
more
being
yeses.
sold, and then ultimately retaining that customer so they're coming back next time. Mm-hmm. Often our technicians also work in 1 week windows, and they're not thinking about making sure that we're getting that technician back the next time. So we do have to slow down a little bit to get that process in place so it is consistent, it is repeatable, and everybody sees the benefit of what it's going to bring us long term.
So you said someone who process maps. Where does this person come from? Did they come from my receptionist desk?
No, she came from another dealer group doing marketing, but I will tell you when she came
So as a marketing person.
Originally, and when she came in to interview with us, we didn't have a role. We didn't have a marketing role. We didn't have a role for her. But in the questioning, when I sat and met with her, I think I was the last person to meet with her, I said, this person is a culture fit for our organization. She understands our mission. I can tell her head is so focused on what we want to do, which is a great associate experience, which then leads to a great customer experience, and we need to create a role for her. And as we understood where her heart lied and where she could make the biggest impact on our company, and we don't ever create new roles. I can't stand adding headcount, but when
Every
you
CFO
find,
is like, I'm sorry, what?
I know, like,
It's not just another one of something I understand. It's something I don't understand.
and then the CFO says,
no one else has.
Is that a
Right.
revenue producing person?
Yeah, but bear with me.
Can we measure it in 30 days? But when you find a great person, you find the right place in your company. And so that's what we did with Judy.
Got it. I think actually questions are up. I wanted to go back to that. If you refresh the app, questions should be live. We have a few. Somebody figured it out already. I'm going to go through some questions. We got about 16 minutes left, and we'll see which direction the conversation goes. So here's the first one. What were some of the most beneficial things that were experienced through leading change that you didn't expect to experience in the beginning? This is kind of a part of that question as well. How does it fulfill leaders different? I'm sorry. Okay. So what are some of the most beneficial things that were experienced that you didn't expect leading some of these big, process changes that have to do with people? We'll start there.
I guess I can take this one.
Yeah.
I mean, being from
Everybody
an
can
outside perspective and working with a bunch of different dealers, when, similar to the points that were made earlier, when we first started working with dealers on process change, especially around the sales experience, it was all for the customer, right? It was the customer, because we knew that was the primary focus. But one of the unexpected benefits is how much happier it made our people, right? And you guys can attest to this. Is when they had more direction and they understood the way it was supposed to be done and more control in their lives. We found that they were happier. We had less turnover at the dealership level. We were able to bring in new individuals that maybe we'd never brought into the dealership before, different generations of employees. That was kind of one of the unexpected benefits. At first, we had hoped that that's what was going to happen, and that's one of the things that I really want to point out when we talk about some of these new technologies. Lots of times we're bouncing them off of our seasoned people who don't really necessarily want to use them, care to use them, like the way they've been doing things for 10 or 15 years, but we're not thinking far enough ahead to the younger generations that we're trying to bring into the business. And that's one of the big things that I've seen from the OEM side that is a real concern to me. Okay, we have a lot of people that have been in the industry for a long time that are very stable, but everybody that we're bringing in that's a zillennial, right? That's a Gen Z or a millennial, that's a or a Gen Y, they're not sticking. They're not sticking at all. And so we're constantly rotating those people out. And so what we found is the more training we did, the more use of technology that we brought in, which they adapt to really easily. In some cases, they believe that it's more of a collaboration than it is a confrontation with the customer. We found that we were able to bring in people that didn't have any automotive industry experience, and they stuck. That was something that we learned.
Something just struck me. You said the word stable, and I feel like stability is what process aspires to, but I feel like the more stable it gets, the closer it probably gets to actually the next iteration from stable is probably stale. But you get this level of stability, and then because everything's moving, right? The consumer's changing, the needs are changing, the types of vehicles are changing. And so I almost feel like we get to this process, this place of stability, and then right on the other side of that is like, oh, that might be outdated a little bit or need to be updated. So is there a mechanism to keep it fresh, right? Because I think first step, let's find something that works. And then when we get something that works, it never really always works or keeps working. How do we continue to visit it, look at it? Like, is there a review process? Is there a cadence that you have for like, how are we going to look at what is working on a consistent basis?
I don't know if personally, I don't have a process for it, but I try to listen as much as possible, right? That could be listening at events like this, or it could be listening to my people, and kind of seeing where they're at. Because a lot of times, I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is not listening and missing out on something that could be better, right?
Which can be easy too, because everything
100%.
like it's a complex business to run.
Right.
Right. And everyone that's here doesn't have a lot of free time,
For sure.
But I think Liza touched on something earlier that I think is really important, and that is the 30-day cycle. Okay, and OEMs are a big part of that. I can speak freely now. Okay, I mean, as a field leader, you have to hit your objective on a monthly basis. That's what's on your performance review. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there that are leaders of your OEMs that could care less if you ever change, because they just need you to hit your sales objective. That's it. That's all they care about. Okay. All they care about is you hitting your sales objective, and whether or not and if you put in some sort of process change that you think is better for your people or it's better for your consumer, if you miss your objective, they're going to be all over you. And you got to be able to fade that heat. You got to be able to fade that heat to be able to say, I hear you, I'm sorry, okay, but this is for the long-term best interest of our consumer and yours, okay, and you need to be patient with me as I go through this change,
Paul, a couple of months ago, I think it was August, we took a part of our team from our Toyota dealership down to Dallas, Texas. Have any of you guys gone to the Toyota Accelerate leadership training? Anybody in the room? All Toyota dealers are able to go down to this 3-day training. It's put on by the SMU Cox School of Business. And one of the big pieces of the training that they took us through is leading through change. And we were talking about some of these big concepts that we need to be able to adjust in our dealerships and how that change process works. And it was pretty fascinating. And once you hear it, you're like, well, this is common sense. But in the moment when you're trying to lead change, you don't necessarily see this. So they gave us this great example about, as a leader, we might go to different conferences and events, and we finally, after maybe a year of hearing a great idea, think, you know what, it's time for us to embrace this at our dealership. We're going to go to a single contact sales process. By the time we've gotten to the point where we're making this decision, we've gone through all the motions, and we are pumped up and excited as leaders to go out there. This is the change that we're going to do. And
Who's
you announce
with
it
me?
to everybody.
Right.
Let's roll.
Anybody.
Well, as soon as you announce that, your team has to go through this whole process that you've already been going through for a year to decide you're going to make this change in your company. And it starts with they feel betrayed. They feel like maybe what they were doing prior wasn't good enough. And then they go through denial. Well, they're not going to really stick to this idea. It's going to last 30 days and then it's going to be gone. And then I can't remember, I'm drawing a blank on what the next spot is. And then finally they get to renewal, where they say, okay, I understand the why now. I'm ready to embrace this, and together we're all going to move forward. But so often as leaders, we're already at renewal when we're making this announcement to our teams, and we don't take the time to address these different emotions that they go through and ride that wave with them so that ultimately we can keep this change in place. It does tie back to the 30-day cycle, but also the recognition that we're already through that process, and then we've got to make sure as leaders we take our team through that same change process.
Well, the more progressive and visionary you are as a leader, it just comes naturally to accept the next thing and get excited about it, and then be ready to run.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point, because you have to be able to explain to them why you're changing or you want to change, and really get them to buy into it. You can't just jump in one day, because as you said, you've gone through months of agonizing over this, and then all of a sudden you're going to say, okay, we're switching the whole entire sales process tomorrow, and they just have to deal with it. Right. So that's a huge point.
To bring a story to that. So I remember when we were switching to the all roadster process, right? And I'd done all this preparation with some of our members of our team, and we've got it all ready, and we're rolling it out to our team. And I'm sure all of you have one. You've got that salesperson who already does a great job, right? But they're like, why do we need to do this, right? So in the middle of the meeting, he goes, why are you doing this? It doesn't seem.
Here's a copy of Who Moved My Cheese.
Right.
You read this,
It doesn't seem broke to me. And I said, well, Jimmy, sometimes if things aren't broke, it's okay to iterate on top of them and maybe break them and push towards something new. And the main reason I'm doing it is so you become more efficient, you deliver a better experience, and blah, 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 right? And Jimmy then was selling 15 to 18 cars a month, right? Now Jimmy sells 30 to 35 cars a month. And one of my favorite things to do is remind Jimmy.
Remember that time.
Right, remember that time, yeah. But, we had to go through all those stages in order to get get on top of it. And I think the most important thing is, as a leader, you cannot over communicate, right? Like, it's reminding them of that vision all the time so they don't forget that this is where we're going and this is why we're going there, and these are the steps we need to take. And I think that's really important to not lose sight of when you go through changes like this.
And I think to add to your story, the old saying goes, you don't replace your roof when it's raining outside, right? Mm-hmm. And so I remember, back when dealers were, at least at Audi, were negative gross, okay, and I'm trying to get them to change their sales process, and they're like, no, you can't touch my sales process. I'm not making any money. Okay. And then we go into COVID and they're making all kinds of money. And I'm like, well, you need to change your sales process. No, don't touch my sales process. We're making lots of money. And I'm like, well, okay. So you got to change it sometime, right? So it's better off to change it, before we all know what's coming, right? We all know this EV situation is coming. Okay. And incentives are going to be back and inventory is going to be back. We all know it's coming. And so if you're thinking about changing your processes at the dealership, now is the time to do it. Now.
All right, we got a couple questions. We have 5 minutes left and several questions, so let's try to get through as many as we can. Here's one. Often it seems that process change is avoided due to fear of decreased gross per vehicle. With the shift away from the F&I box to a single point of contact for selling, did Phil see any decreased profits?
We saw the exact opposite. And I'll give you kind of an idea of how we were functioning, because I think it is important in the transition. So from a process standpoint, our sales management team out on the floor was submitting the initial deal to the bank and, getting some products set up. Our salespeople were already pitching kind of like in a first pencil product to the customer, right? And I was looking at our deal one day and said, I don't think my finance people are doing all that much anymore. So I had them start tracking, and I was right. They were only upselling the customer 25% of the time once it went back there, right? And I'm like, well, why am I paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars to upsell 25% of the time? And what we found was, with the switch, we were in a good place because our people were already being trained on how to talk about the product within the first pencil of the deal, right? And our sales managers were already used to submitting the deal to banks and kind of working with banks to get a good first approval on it. So when we made the switch, it went rather smooth. And now we see our F&I per copy is up almost $500 a car because, again, it goes back to that customer feels really comfortable with that product specialist. They've just spent
question.
Some time
is that the gross, or are you selling more products? Because what I've seen is the product penetration goes way up.
We've got
way up.
That's gross. That 500 is increase in gross, but our product penetration has also gone up. Yeah,
I've seen dealers go up as much as 200% in product penetration when they go to single point of contact, which is the future of the industry. Negotiation free, single point of contact. Okay, and omni-channel digital retailing, same tool on your website as in store. I'm telling you, get ahead of the curve. Do those now.
There you go. I have a question for Kirk. Having been on OEM side for so long, as has been talked about, a lot more success comes from unique processes implemented at a dealer level, but sometimes there's a disconnect between what the OEM wants or mandates and what an individual dealer knows works for them. How do you balance the two?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I can only speak from our position and the way I ran things at Audi. And we looked at higher level experiences that we wanted the dealers to deliver. And then we allowed the dealer to customize how they delivered it. Okay, so that's because I've got 30 years of working with dealers. That's the way I see it. I'm not going to go in and tell you exactly how you need to sell a car. But what we designed is specific experiences that we wanted the dealers to deliver. For instance, we wanted the dealer to pick up where the customer left off online. Okay, that's what you have to do, regardless of tool, whether it's Roadster, Darwin, Gubagoo, CarNow, etc. Okay, so we let the dealers have flexibility on whatever tool they wanted to use. Okay, you have to pick up where they left off, but how they did it was kind of up to them. So it's kind of hard for me to speak for the other OEMs because that's not the way I've ever done it. I don't know, other than showing them that you can accomplish I guess the first question I would ask is, what exactly do you want me to accomplish? Like, what's your end goal? What are you looking to get out of this? Okay. And let me show you that I can accomplish exactly what you want me to accomplish.
That's good. Identify
in
the
a
metric.
different way.
Identify the metric.
What is it that you're wanting me to do? Why? And then, if you can do that in another way, then you try to get them to agree to it. That's about the only thing. Because we would make exceptions.
Yep.
Okay. If a dealer would come to me and say,
it had to be clear.
This is not exactly the way. This is not an approved tool. Okay. Then I would say, okay, show it to me. And then we'd sit down and we'd debate whether or not it was accomplishing what it is that we wanted to accomplish. And at the end of the day, we would say, okay, you're right. We didn't know about this. And that's a new process, and you're good to go.
All right. Everybody just got their ASOTUCon app notification. So I seen everybody like, oh, it says we're not done yet with a picture of Volcano. Got a big ending plan for the day. One question. This will be the last for today. This one's for Liza. Are there any processes you pioneered in stores that you think every dealer would benefit from? Obviously, each situation is different, but is there a one that you say, hey, we implemented this thing that I think everybody would benefit from?
Well, I'm not going to give the answer that they want, because one of the things that, what for good or for better or worse, across our 23 stores, we do not mandate one process. And that somewhat goes back to what Kirk was saying. We really want our managers and our leaders to have that creative entrepreneurial spirit. And we are going to say, this is the metric. There are a few non-negotiables, but it's going to work differently at our Volkswagen store, which is very small, versus the Toyota store, which is 10 times its size. So I don't have an answer to say, here's one process we've implemented. Unfortunately, that I would suggest to everybody. But I would suggest listening to the idea that Kirk just put out. What is the metric that we're trying to achieve with customer experience, and empower our teams to bring creative solutions to those ideas within their stores?
Well, let's hear for Liza, Phil, and Kirk. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time and wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. One last thing. I got plenty of time on my hands. If anybody needs me to mystery shop your store,
hey, that
reach
sounds
out
like a
to me.
great deal.
All right. No charge. I'm happy to work with you.
Fantastic. We'll see you all on the main stage.